Wet, cold, and terrified, Daniel is in the need of a short reprieve. There is no better place to warm up than here. This heavenly resort is being referred to as the Back Hall, serving as a hub area, connecting a few interesting places along with a large storage facility and, not least, an exquisite guest room to make Daniel's stay more appealing. This is most likely the first area where Daniel was brought to, allowing him to collect himself for a brief time before the Baron would eagerly give him a tour on the Inner Sanctum Express. It's fascinating just how much this area promises safety and peace. Do take note of the environmental detail. The hall is not just wonderful, it's in pristine condition. It's as if the Guardian of the Orbs never haunted the castle in the first place. Perhaps more areas of the castle would carry this exact atmosphere and feeling were it not for the slow destruction and occult presence. For the Back Hall shall too, sadly, suffer the same fate. While heavenly at first, its atmosphere will slowly decay, the Guardian's presence will draw closer, and the scenery will eventually move through several musical scores, each indicating the current state of the once safe haven. Here's another thought. If you pay close attention, then you may have noticed how the environment sometimes corresponds all too well with Daniel's past. Examples of such were mentioned earlier, where a vase would shatter in Daniel's hands and cave-ins occurring to block him in, just as Daniel revisits his journey to Africa, even harmonizing with the timing of his flashback regarding the orb. This might be happening again here. After being chased, wounded, mentally scarred, and almost killed, you are now given a reprieve which attempts to make you forget all horror and lull you into a sense of security, before, and I'm sorry to say this Daniel, you once again are thrown into a nightmare. This corresponds with how prisoners of Brennenburg Castle were tortured, later given the amnesia potion in an attempt to make them forget, and then torturing them again, in order to maximize vitae extraction. Having ascended into the Wanderer's Hall, Daniel's attention is forced towards the left. A door opens up from a mysterious yet calm and welcoming draft. Upon entering, a flashback forces itself into Daniel's mind, and at the same time, rose petals once again appear on the floor and are sucked towards a red, glowing light, once again hinting that the Guardian is leading the way. The elevator doors even patiently unfold, revealing an elevator parked at the top floor.
You have an ascending room. Will it take us to the Inner Sanctum?
It will definitely take care of the vertical part of our journey. So, you have ridden an elevator before?
Yes, the Colosseum at Regent's Park has one. It takes you to the gallery where you can view the panorama.
Good. This ride might be a little longer, and in the other direction.
Following the wishes of his former self, Daniel enters the elevator, but quickly discovers that it isn't in a working state. The nearest door leads into the machine room, allowing for mechanical troubleshooting. This area is sadly also inaccessible and sealed with a key yet to be found. Next to the elevator rest stone sculptures representing lions. I do not know much about this sort of thing, although a quick search online reveals the following elaboration. Typically made of stone, they are known as stone lions or shishi. The concept, which originated and became popular in Chinese Buddhism, features a pair of highly stylized lions, often one male with a ball and one female with a cub, which were thought to protect the building from harmful spiritual influences and harmful people that might be a threat. Whether or not this is relevant, I am not sure, but I found it interesting enough to give a mention, especially since the Guardian of the Orbs ought to count as a harmful spiritual influence. Perhaps this is why the back hall has been safe for so long. On the opposite end of the hall, you will find the descent into the unpleasant storage. The exterior gives no indication of what awaits inside that door. It hosts an evil past which still lingers around, as well as having a bone-chilling atmosphere in complete contrast to the back hall. For now, Daniel needs the machine room key, which can be found in the guest room. Upon entering the guest room, a flashback emerges. At one point, Daniel was shocked to find the guest room ransacked and his journal to be gone. He asks himself what they would want with his journal, indicating he suspects Alexander's servants being the thieves. Due to how Daniel words his reaction, I believe that he was already being suspected by Alexander to be up to no good. Or maybe this even was right before Daniel would journey to the rainy halls and wipe his memories. The first note to himself was written directly before consumption on the spot. As for the other diary entries, why were they all scattered around? And if Daniel did not do this, then who did? Did Alexander order the servants to do so? Did the Guardian have them placed in order to help Daniel regain his memories? If you have any thoughts about this, I would love to read them.
My journal is gone. What would they want with my journal?
Everything is a mess due to the unwarranted search, and the dressing room is inaccessible due to a broken lock. A remnant of Daniel's diary lays on the desk. It is now apparent that being sent home prematurely from Africa was exclusively a good thing, as it was reported that a guide from the expedition was heavily wounded after a confrontation with what was most likely the Guardian of the Orbs starting a pursuit in reclaiming what was stolen. The rest of the expedition were most likely killed on the spot.
2nd of July, 1839. I received a letter today from the Algerian governor's office disclosing the fate of Herbert's expedition. About a week after my departure, Abdullah, one of the men traveling with us, returned from the desert. He was badly injured, as if maimed by a lion. The man rambled deliriously about the expedition being attacked by something horrible. The French quickly dispatched a search party to look for the expedition. After searching for days, they found the camp abandoned without any trace of Herbert or his men. Tomorrow, I'll retrieve the things they recovered from Herbert's tent at the customs house. I don't know what to make of it, but I'm worried for him.
In the bedroom, there is a lot of spilled wine on the floor. In his dreams, Daniel is haunted by the Guardian. It tries to communicate with him, or possibly even intentionally tear him down. Maybe in his dreams he sees what the Guardian sees, as he mentions at one point later seeing the dead people over and over again. As any mortal human being, Daniel relies on sleep to function properly, and it seems that excessive wine consumption is his attempt at dreamless sleep, as some sleep is better than none at all. On a desk rests a crowbar. This will grant you access to the dressing room. The diary entry in this room is concerning Herbert and his possessions, and as it turns out, he wrote the journal as well, although it contradicts Daniel's own records on multiple accounts. Like Daniel, Herbert notices that the guides and workers were not only superstitious, but became insane, most likely due to not feeling welcome down there, and the aura of the orb might have attempted to repel them. What Herbert means by extreme measures in this upcoming text could mean quite a bit, although by that sentence alone, it sounded like madness reached even him.
3rd of July, 1839. Today I picked up Herbert's things at the customs house. I dug through the trove of documents he had carried and found a log detailing the expedition. The nature of this text ranged from quick notes to colourful accounts of transpired events. I skimmed the pages, trying to figure out what might have happened. May 17th, the day I was trapped inside the orb chamber, Herbert dryly states, "Recovered Daniel after 1 hour of entrapment." This confused me greatly. I was suffocating within minutes. How could I have lasted an hour? I continued reading the peculiar text. Herbert states his facts without judgment or passion, but suddenly I could read frustration into his text. He pushed his men to investigate the underground tomb, an effort which seems to have strained the minds of his men. Madness spread through the ranks, and Herbert had to take some extreme measures to continue. He finally visits the chamber himself, where he retrieves the orb to the surface. His account confuses me greatly. If he has the orb, what are those pieces in my drawing room?
Lastly, Herbert visits the chamber himself and retrieves the orb to the surface. This puzzles Daniel, as at this point he believed this orb to be unique. The truth, however, is that there exist many of these orbs, and Herbert must have found a different one. The guest bed looks exclusive and luxury. If touched, a flashback rushes to mind. Daniel is awakened by Alexander, who comes in to check on him, perhaps after hearing screaming. After all, the study where Alexander worked is not at all far from the guest room.
Daniel,
What?
still having nightmares, I see.
Yes, I can't shake them. They come every night.
We'll put a stop to them. You'll see.
This moment is documented further in a diary entry later on, where Alexander further invites Daniel for a cup of tea to discuss and look for a solution. Forcing the dressing room door open, another flashback comes forward. At this point, it seems that Daniel had a reason to hide something in the first place, namely the machine room key being in his possession. His flashback ends before he remembers exactly where he hid it.
The key. Please, let it be here.
The diary entry in here shows a proud Daniel showing off an assembled orb. He awoke from what he considers a nightmare, but something must have been communicated to him. Maybe some supernatural powers which allowed him to interact with and fix the orb, without the need for tools or adhesives. This only fueled his curiosity, however, as it would with anyone.
4th of July, 1839. It's done. The orb is assembled. I was awakened by an exhausting nightmare. Shaking and sweating, I retired to the drawing room with a cup of tea. The relic pieces lay spread across the table as I'd left them, but somehow I knew how it was supposed to be. I fetched the tar, which I had prepared to fix the pieces together, and without fault I joined them, producing the orb I remembered so clearly. The tar proved unnecessary. It was pushed out from the joining pieces as they merged on their own, with no adhesive. The ancient stone relic now rests on my table. Its immaculate surface and perfect shape could have been molded by a factory. This is all too strange.
Out of the blue, the entry door is opened, and a loud growl can be heard. Disfigured servant grunts are now on the lookout for Daniel, and they are not on friendly terms. The dressing room door is thrown shut by instinct, but this in return alerts a point of interest. The only good hiding spot is one of the two closets. Get in there and don't dare make a sound. If Daniel freezes in fear, one would think that he is doomed. The grunt servant, however, struggles with intelligence and cognitive ability. Since the door doesn't slam nor move, the vile creature will not suspect there being anyone in there and thus will do a limited check. It does, after all, have to cover a very large area in its search for Daniel, who could be just about anywhere in the castle. The musical score of a servant grunt's aura is one to be remembered. It has a hint of klutz, mixed in with fast-paced dread and terror. There's no question you want to stay far, far away from those wretched beings. In either scenario, the servant will do a lazy search and eventually leave the guest room. One thing to note is that the servant uses the door normally instead of breaking through, as would be the usual procedure, seeing as their hands are quite deformed and may not easily grab things. Daniel looks for the key, and while staring at the painting in the guest room, a gust of wind tilts it and reveals that it guards a hidden compartment. The machine room key is hidden there and stored in a tiny bottle. Why this is the case has always baffled me, but if Daniel knew the servants would come looking for it, perhaps putting it in a bottle would confuse them to the point of thinking it was just a bottle. Once again, the intelligence of those beings are easily challenged. At an earlier point in time, I doubt Daniel was aware how any of the castle's servants looked like at the time. They were probably veiled by cloth or darkness. At this point, it is quite possibly he already knew their true appearance and their intellect.
Oh, thank God, there it is. I guess it is a good place to hide it then.
After deeming it safe to leave the guest room, Daniel steps into a pool of blood on the ground. The servant that left moments ago has been slashed into pieces, with only the torso remaining. Did something similar happen as in the refinery? Did the Guardian do this? Who else could have? Once again, it seems that the Guardian is helping Daniel along the way, although if intentionally or not is still a mystery. The safe, heavenly ambience has shifted to an atmosphere similar to the one in the entrance hall. The place now carries an aura of uncertainty, and it becomes clear that the back hall is no longer as safe as it once felt like. The study entrance is directly next to the guest room, and the Baron has done a lot of grotesque research here. This section is very dirty and dusty, with little to no maintenance, although the candles are lit. One room has become a mere storage of furniture, old artifacts and junk. Another room is a bit more spacious and tidy, but not much better. Books are all over the place. The Baron must have done a lot of frantic research in here. The guest room is visible through the window. A note on the table is a very, very old one, written by Agrippa way back within his mortal lifetime. He addresses a close friend, Johann Weyer, and admits that the truth is in order. Agrippa reveals that he was looking for the same kind of orbs as Daniel brought home from Africa in present time, but that they also once were within local reach from Brennenburg Castle. An orb was stolen and Agrippa fled the scene. The Guardian shortly gave chase, breaking down reality in the path that Agrippa lay behind him, manipulating color and light while killing anyone who would stand in the way in the path of reclaiming the orb. Eventually, the Guardian catches up, and the next thing being recorded is waking up somewhere else far, far away. The Guardian spared the man, possibly because his intentions were more noble when compared to Alexander, but being such a dreadful entity, it has caused Agrippa so much fear that he basically was silenced and refused to acknowledge ever being there, until now. The whimpers of a tortured canine have been part of the ambience for a while now, and it came from this very study room. The Baron is in the need for vitae, and he does not mind much how it is acquired. He is not from this world, and does not sympathize well with animals nor humans. He finds out that vitae is in the blood of a scared and stressed human and dog alike. Though all his research is being based on animals for now, they are much less of a hassle to acquire. In the end, he switches over to research on humans exclusively.
Let's see what you have to offer. What a mess. I should have sharpened the saw, but I can sense it. It's definitely there.
Humans are more effective in the way that they can better anticipate, appreciate, and dread pain and torture. In addition to this, humans are less likely to die from the exercise, so multiple extractions make for better efficiency. In the innermost office, the Baron has a lot of skeletons in his closet. This could be merely a bad case of hallucinations, but we now do know that Alexander did quite some grotesque studies on humans, and the Baron has very little filters. It is plausible that he would just store research objects, for the lack of better words, into a cupboard like this. The man on the painting is most likely Alexander, the Baron himself. When Daniel's sanity gets too low, he will hallucinate and see a grotesque, melted face, as will be shown later on. Perhaps how he really looks like beneath a fake appearance? The hallway ahead is blocked by a cave-in, so there is no way to go further this way unless one thinks outside the box. The Guardian roars fiercely outside. One of the windows shows a weakness, as it almost shatters from the shaking alone. Using an object, Daniel successfully breaks the window and is able to progress using the outside window tills. This is the first time Daniel gets some fresh air in a while. Once again, the guest room exterior is visible. I wonder if it will be searched again. A weak roar is emitted and the tree is tipped over. This gives the feeling as if the Guardian is a large dinosaur walking around and causing destruction. After all, it's causing parts of the castle to collapse on itself. Some fleshy residue is also visible, hanging like spiderweb between the trees and the building. One of the accessible rooms contains elevator machine instructions along with a flow cycle rod. This is one of 3 rods necessary for the elevator to function. 2 other functional rods are required, and they are in the machine parts section of the dark storage facility. This is as steep as one can venture in there, making for a terrifying journey. On the way back out the window, in order to return, another roar can be heard, and this time a tree is visibly seen tipping over. The Guardian is angry, paying close attention to Daniel as it roams around the castle impatiently. Sometimes the Guardian feels like a haunting spiritual presence, while at other times it seems to manifest itself as a giant invisible beast stomping around. It is not easy to determine exactly what it is and what it can do, but it's best to keep up the pace and look forward. The storage is up next, so one must stay focused and determined, now more than ever. Do you have any stories you wish to share about when you play the game? Some speculation perhaps? I would love to read them, so please share them in the comment section on any of these videos. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.